My name is Kathy Shear, I'm 32, and 3 days before my sister's wedding, my phone rang. Not literally, but it might as well have exploded. A message from Emily popped up. Still missing the last 2 gifts. Don't bother showing up without them. I blinked. Blinked again. My thumb hovered over the reply button, but I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to reply, didn't want to explain. I already knew what she wanted. A Rolex and a car. Not a joke. Not a gentle nudge. Just a command, a line drawn in text that somehow made me feel small. Before I could gather myself, my phone pinged again. This time it was Mom. Her voice was icy when I answered, sharper than I remembered, almost rehearsed. Kathy, if you were real family, you'd complete the list. No hello. No, how are you? Nothing. Just a test. I sat back in my chair and exhaled slowly, realizing that the apartment was quieter than it had been in years. That rare, suffocating quiet that makes you hear yourself think. And in that quiet, it hit me. For months, for years even, I had been playing a role I didn't even realize was optional. Fixer. Wallet. Peacekeeper. Silent yes machine. And all they had done was expect more. 6 months earlier, I had been thrilled to help. Emily's excitement over the wedding had been infectious. Her voice had bubbled through the phone one afternoon. We found the perfect venue. Deposit is due fast. You know how Dad gets about big payments. I didn't even pause. I've got it, I said, barely letting her finish her sentence. And I did. Venue deposit? Covered. Catering? Booked. Photographer? Paid when her friend with a camera bailed. I even secretly booked a 2-week honeymoon in Hawaii as a gift for her and Mark. Flights, resort, excursions, the works. Daniel, my boyfriend, had noticed the spreadsheet chaos one evening. Kathy, are you sure they're not taking advantage? He asked quietly. I'd laughed, waved it off. It's my sister's wedding. Of course, it's what family does. Choosing invitations, paying for gifts, booking vendors, handling phone calls nobody else returned, it all became background noise. I didn't keep track, didn't keep score. But apparently, the universe kept the score anyway. Then came the list. Emily sent it in pastel colors, neat fonts. 10 items. The first 5 were simple. Espresso machine, matching robes, vacuum, wine set, glassware. Easy. Done. Scheduled. Then I scrolled down. My eyes froze. Last 2 items. A Rolex. And a car. Just thrown on like they were pens or napkins. My fingers hovered over my phone. It had to be a joke. I called her. Emily. The Rolex and the car. That's a joke, right? A pause, then breezy, almost carefree. No joke. They'll elevate the aesthetic. People notice these things. I exhaled sharply. Emily, I'm not buying a car or a Rolex. She sighed, hard. Then I hope the venue is refundable. It slid past me. I didn't yell. Didn't cry. I didn't argue. Just noted it. A small part of me still wanted to explain, to rationalize, to be the helper everyone expected. But the larger part, the part that had finally stopped making excuses, sat quietly and simply understood that I had been played. And that part, the quiet, observing part, realized I didn't have to be the person they wanted me to be anymore. The thing about being the helpful sister is that it feels normal. Until it doesn't. 6 months ago, I would have laughed at the idea that my generosity could ever become a weapon against me. Emily's voice was always bright, bubbling with excitement. Kathy, we found the perfect place. But you know how Dad is about big deposits, she'd said, almost skipping over her own stress. I didn't wait to hear more. I told her, I'll handle it. And I did. I covered the venue deposit on my credit card. I arranged the catering, booked the photographer when their friend backed out. I even secretly booked their honeymoon, 2 weeks in Hawaii, all expenses paid, excursions, resort, flights. Daniel watched me scroll through spreadsheets one night, brow furrowed. "Are you sure they're not taking advantage?" he asked softly. I waved him off. "It's my sister's wedding. This is what family does." I helped choose the invitations, paid for gifts, handled calls Emily never returned. I thought it was love, kindness, family duty. I never counted. But the list, oh the list, kept score. Emily sent it in pastel colors and cheerful fonts, a wish list she claimed would make planning easier. 10 items. The first 5 were normal: espresso machine, vacuum, matching robes, fancy wine set, customized glassware. Easy. Done. Delivered. Checked off. Then I scrolled down to the last 2. My jaw clenched. A Rolex. A car. A luxury car. No joke, no hint of irony. Just a demand. My hands froze on my phone, waiting for my brain to label it a mistake. It didn't. I called her. "Emily, the Rolex and the car. You're joking, right?" "No joke," she said, voice breezy, almost distracted. I could hear the clinking of glasses behind her. A luxury watch and a car elevate the aesthetic. People notice. "Emily, I'm not buying a car or a Rolex." There was a long sigh on the other end. "Then I hope the venue is refundable." It was almost comical if it weren't so infuriating. After 6 months of handling everything, of being the silent backbone of this wedding, the last 2 gifts were the test. The proof that I'd either continue being the helpful sister, the ATM, or finally say no. And this time, I said nothing. Weeks passed. I watched as everyone else went about the final preparations. Invitations printed, flowers picked, dresses tailored, without so much as a thank you for the countless hours and thousands of dollars I had already spent. Emily gave a toast at a family gathering, bright and cheerful. "I want to thank Mark's parents for making all this possible," she said, clapping her hands together. People clapped. I sat in the corner. Nobody clapped for me. Daniel squeezed my hand, whispering, "You okay?" "Fine," I lied. Later, Emily cornered me near the cake table, her voice low, conspiratorial. "So, any update on the car?" "No," I said simply. "The answer is still no." Her eyes widened. Offended. Shocked. A tiny bead of frustration crossed her forehead, barely noticeable. Mark, her fiancé, had joined her, looping an arm around her waist. "What's going on?" he asked. Emily shot me a look that could cut glass. "Kathy doesn't want to help with the last 2 gifts," she said loudly. Mark laughed, a loud, careless chuckle. "Performative. Kind of wild. You work in tech and can't swing a car and a Rolex? What's the point of your money then?" I felt a surge of heat, but I kept my voice even. "That's my money, not yours." Nothing more needed to be said. That night, I sat in my apartment. Daniel was at work. Silence surrounded me, heavy, comforting, clarifying. I opened the venue contract. Read it. And I cancelled it. I paused the catering orders, cancelled the remaining arrangements, typed a simple message to Emily. "Venue and catering are no longer covered. You'll need to make other arrangements." I pressed send. The typing bubble flickered. Then it disappeared. Silence. Quiet. Real quiet. The part of me that had been the silent yes machine had finally died. The next morning, my phone exploded. Missed calls, voicemails, texts. Emily screaming. Mom shouting. Dad trying to reason. And through it all, I didn't respond. Not a word. My silence wasn't anger. It was peace. For the first time in months, I felt still. I realized that the version of me they relied on, the quiet, helpful, endlessly giving Kathy, was gone. And nobody knew it yet. The family gathering 2 weeks before the wedding was meant to be small, intimate. But to me, it felt like a battlefield. Emily floated through the room in her perfectly pressed dress, radiant and untouchable, her excitement like a spotlight shining over everyone else. Except me. As soon as she raised her glass, she gave a toast. I want to thank Mark's parents for making all of this possible. People clapped politely. But my contribution, the 6 months of planning, every dollar I'd spent, the venue, the photographer, even the surprise honeymoon, I didn't exist in her speech. My existence had been reduced to nothing more than background noise. I felt Daniel's hand on mine, grounding me. "You okay?" he whispered. "Fine," I murmured, though I wasn't. Not fine. Not anymore. After the toast, Emily sidled over to me near the dessert table, whispering like a cat plotting a trap. "So, any update on the car?" "No," I said evenly. "The answer is still no." Her eyes widened, and I could see the disbelief bubbling underneath her calm veneer. She opened her mouth, probably to argue, but Mark's casual, careless laugh filled the space. "What's going on?" he asked, looping an arm around her waist, clearly enjoying the drama. Emily, frustrated, repeated, "Kathy doesn't want to help with the last 2 gifts." Mark chuckled loudly. "Performative. You work in tech and can't swing a car and a Rolex? What's the point of your money then?" Laughter rippled through the room. People shifted, unsure whether to join in or stay silent. But I didn't flinch. My voice was calm, steady, cutting through the chatter. "That's my money. Not yours." The room fell silent for a moment, just long enough for the tension to taste bitter in my mouth. Emily's lips pressed into a thin line, her jaw tight, as if she couldn't believe the nerve of me. And that was the moment I realized, everything they depended on me for, all the generosity they took for granted, was about to collapse. Back at my apartment later that night, the quiet was heavier than ever. Daniel was at work. I sat alone, staring at the glow of my laptop. My mind was racing, but not with fear or regret. Clarity had finally settled. I opened the venue contract, read it line by line, then cancelled it. The deposit was gone, yes, but so was their control over me. I paused every other order. Catering, rentals, even the little details that Emily and Mark thought were just my endless generosity. Then I typed a single message to Emily. "Venue and catering are no longer covered. You'll need to make other arrangements." Send. Typing bubble flickered. Then nothing. Silence. That silence wasn't anger, it wasn't revenge. It was my power. 4 years, I had been the invisible support beam holding the wedding together. Now, the beam had quietly withdrawn, leaving the structure to shake on its own. The next morning, the explosion came. My phone lit up like a war room. 27 missed calls, a dozen voicemails. Emily, screaming. Mom, dramatic and trembling. Dad trying to reason, but every call, every text, was a reminder that my silence was louder than words. I didn't respond. Not once. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. It wasn't just my money they lost control over. It was the illusion of their perfect wedding, the narrative they had built where everyone else's generosity could be claimed as their own. Mark's family, who thought they were funding a portion of the wedding, now questioned every detail. The truth, the fact that I had quietly covered everything, was surfacing, and chaos ensued. By mid-morning, Emily was frantic. Every call unanswered, every plan disrupted. The groom's parents, furious, demanded answers. Emily's carefully curated image of a generous, classy wedding was crumbling. And I sat back, finally able to watch it unfold. Not with glee, not with vengeance, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had finally reclaimed herself. In those hours, I realized the magnitude of what had changed. For the first time, I wasn't the fixer, the giver, the silent yes. I was a person with boundaries. And the chaos, while overwhelming to them, was simply the echo of my freedom. The wedding morning arrived with an almost eerie calm. Emily moved through her plans like a queen of a fragile kingdom, her perfectly pressed gown and flawless makeup hiding the storm brewing beneath. But the storm wasn't hers, it was mine. The calm before the chaos. I sat in my apartment, sipping coffee, letting the sunlight fall across my face. The quiet felt luxurious. No phone buzzing, no demands, no last-minute panic calls. The version of Kathy who once carried the weight of everyone else's expectations had quietly stepped aside. Then came the messages. A flood of texts and voicemails from family, friends, even vendors. Emily screamed in a voicemail, her words rapid, panicked. "You can't do this. You can't take everything away. This isn't fair." Mom's voice followed, trembling but furious. "Kathy, how could you betray your own sister? How could you ruin everything we've worked for?" Dad tried reason. "Kathy, it's not too late. You can fix this. Don't let pride destroy everything." But it wasn't pride. It was clarity. And it wasn't about fixing a wedding anymore. It was about reclaiming myself. At the reception, the chaos unfolded like a story I had been waiting to witness. Emily's carefully curated image of control began to crack as vendors called her, asking for payment. The venue, the caterers, the photographers, they needed immediate answers. And for the first time, she had none. Then came the toast. Uncle David, a man who rarely spoke in public and never dramatized, raised his glass. The room fell silent, sensing the weight in his calm, deliberate voice. "None of this would have happened without Kathy Scher," he said. "She paid for everything. She only withdrew when she was disrespected. Tonight, we toast to integrity. To Kathy." The room froze. A few claps, a few awkward glances. Most guests didn't know how to react. Emily's face went pale, tight-lipped, her eyes flicking between disbelief and fury. Mark followed her closely, whispering something urgent, but the damage was done. The truth, the invisible labor, the financial sacrifices, the quiet months of planning, was now public. People couldn't ignore it. My contribution, erased for months, was finally acknowledged. And the recognition didn't come from me demanding it. It came from someone who saw the truth, who valued integrity over appearances. Emily stormed out shortly after, dragging Mark behind her. Guests whispered among themselves, confused and shocked. I remained seated, watching silently, sipping my drink. Daniel's hand found mine under the table. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Even Mark's family, who had been misled to believe they were funding the wedding, now knew the truth. Their shock was palpable. Conversations started quietly at first. Questions about invoices, donations, and who had actually paid for what. The facade Emily and her parents had built crumbled under the weight of facts. By evening, I had contacted the travel agency. The honeymoon I had booked under my name? Cancelled. No credit, no freebie, no handout. I kept the money. I could have offered it back to them as a lesson, but I didn't. I took control. I reclaimed my financial autonomy. Messages continued to pour in. Some incredulous, some apologetic, a few congratulatory. Cousin Rachel, one of the rare family members who never participated in the entitlement circus, sent a text. "Not everyone would have done what you did. You weren't crazy." And for once, I let someone see me, not the silent helper, not the background provider, but the person who finally said no. The wedding, now stripped of its opulence, went on. Photos and videos emerged online. Folding chairs, fairy lights strung unevenly, simple catering. Emily's attempts at maintaining perfection looked brittle and forced. Yet, the reality was undeniable. I had stopped being a pawn in a game that wasn't mine to play. That evening, as I scrolled through a video from a coworker who attended, I saw it all. Uncle David's toast. Emily frozen, humiliated. Guests processing the truth. The moment was surreal, almost cinematic. I didn't smile, didn't laugh, didn't gloat. I simply observed. It wasn't about victory. It was about justice, accountability, and finally breathing freely. For the first time, my family couldn't dictate the narrative. My silence had spoken louder than words ever could. And in the quiet aftermath, I understood something vital. Their chaos was a reflection of their own choices, not my failure. The morning after the wedding, the calm of my apartment was a stark contrast to the storm my family was living through. My phone buzzed incessantly with missed calls, texts, even emails. Emily's messages shifted tone rapidly, from frantic pleading, "You have to fix this," to guilt, "I just wanted one perfect day," to anger, "You're jealous. You always have been." Mom called repeatedly, her voice dripping with a mix of shame and fury. Dad tried to negotiate, leaving reasoned voicemails about family healing and making things right. But nothing could undo what had already happened. I didn't respond. Silence was my new boundary. The wedding had been publicly exposed as a farce, the truth about who had paid for what had trickled through every corner of the family network. Mark's parents, once convinced they were funding the lavish event, were now scrambling for answers. Vendors demanded payment. Guests whispered about the missing luxury touches. Emily's carefully curated image of generosity and perfection had crumbled. And I realized, with a clarity I hadn't felt in years, that none of it was my responsibility anymore. The debts, the embarrassment, the panic, they were theirs to deal with. My obligation to this family had ended the moment I refused the last 2 gifts. I began the practical work of reclaiming what was mine. The honeymoon I had booked under my name? Cancelled. No credits. No substitutions. I kept the money. Every gift I had purchased, the espresso machine, the matching robes, the wine set, was either cancelled, rerouted, or when stores wouldn't refund, resold. Slowly, I recouped a substantial portion of the thousands I had spent over the months. Cousin Rachel, the one family member who had never played the entitlement game, texted me mid-morning. "Wait, you actually did it?" I replied simply, "Yes." The silence that followed felt delicious. Emily's desperation reached a new peak when she realized the honeymoon wasn't happening. She and Mark had planned to show up early, expecting to bask in the luxury I had arranged, only to be turned away at the resort desk. I imagined the scene, Emily, demanding rooms and privileges, her carefully rehearsed anger unable to hide her shock. Mark, confused and frustrated, trying to navigate a situation he didn't understand. Meanwhile, my parents were scrambling behind the scenes. They called Mark's parents to defend Emily, claiming I was unstable and overreacting. But their calls didn't have the impact they hoped. Mark's parents stood firmly on my side, now understanding the extent of Emily's manipulation and the deception that had been perpetuated. Over the next 2 days, the quiet ripple effect spread. Groomsmen, cousins, vendors, people who had been aware of the situation privately, began asking pointed questions, trying to untangle the truth. Guests whispered. Vendors shared receipts. Emily had no answers. By now, I had started to feel something I hadn't experienced in years. Empowerment. Every cancelled order, every recovered dollar, every redirected gift was a tangible manifestation of my agency. I had been the silent backbone of a wedding that wasn't mine to fund or fix, and I had finally stepped out from under that weight. Even the small details mattered. I had chosen to reclaim my gifts with intention, not anger. Each action was deliberate, a quiet declaration. I am done being taken for granted. Then, a message arrived from Uncle David, the man who had toasted my integrity at the reception. "Kathy, you probably don't want to hear from anyone right now, but I meant every word I said. Others did too." We ended up talking for nearly half an hour. He explained that Mark's parents had confronted the couple, asking why I had shouldered so much, why they had misled everyone about payments, why the truth had been hidden. David's words were like a bomb. He said, "They felt humiliated. Not by you, but by their own choices and lies. They finally understand the consequences of their deception." Then came news about the repayment plan. Mark, previously coddled and dependent, would now be personally responsible for every dollar of the wedding he and Emily had promised others they were funding. 3 months. No extensions. No parental bailouts. The chaos they had created landed squarely on their shoulders. And I sat back, quietly, finally free of the burden I had carried for months. My family's scrambling, their panic, their exposure, it wasn't my doing. It was the natural outcome of their deception meeting the boundary I had set. For the first time, I felt the full weight of my freedom. Not triumph. Not revenge. Just a steady, unwavering peace that comes from knowing I had done the right thing, and that the consequences were landing where they belonged. The days after the wedding unfolded in a quiet rhythm I had never experienced before. No frantic calls, no constant errands, no invisible expectation to fix what wasn't mine. I woke up one morning, stretched, and realized that for the first time in years, I had nothing pressing to do for anyone else. The relief was almost shocking. I thought about Emily, her fury, her disbelief, her humiliation. And I thought about myself, calm, grounded, untethered. I hadn't sought revenge. I hadn't even expected recognition. But by standing my ground, by finally saying no, the truth had spoken louder than any argument ever could. I hadn't ruined a wedding. I had reclaimed my life. The honeymoon credit I had converted after canceling Emily and Mark's trip became my first act of pure freedom. I booked a solo trip to Hawaii. No itinerary. No schedule. No obligations. Just me, the ocean, and the sun. I arrived and immediately felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The waves crashed against the shore, rhythmic and unbothered, reminding me that life doesn't demand your surrender. It flows around you, and you choose your part. I hiked at sunrise, watching the sky shift from gold to pink to blazing orange. I wandered along quiet beaches, ate meals I genuinely enjoyed, and slept without the nagging anxiety that had haunted me for months. For the first time, yes wasn't a forced response. It was a gift I gave myself. And no wasn't guilt. It was a boundary. Messages from family occasionally came through, but they no longer held weight. Mom asked for help with forms. Dad sent vague emails about family healing. Emily didn't reach out at all. And that silence, her silence, was the most honest thing she had ever given me. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was truth. I thought about all the years I had spent trying to be seen, to be appreciated, to be the helpful, endlessly giving daughter and sister. And I realized, their inability to recognize me wasn't my failure. It was theirs. The lesson was clear. Love, respect, and acknowledgement aren't earned by giving until you break. They are freely given, or withheld. Even Daniel, quiet and supportive, noticed the transformation. "You look lighter," he said one morning, watching me sip coffee as the sun spilled across the balcony. And I did feel lighter, unburdened, unbound by expectations that weren't mine. The family drama, of course, continued without me. Videos surfaced of Emily at the post-wedding brunch at my parents' house, attempting to play the exhausted bride card. Folding chairs, paper plates, fake laughter, an imitation of the perfection she had tried to manufacture. People whispered, comparing what was promised to what actually existed. And in the background of every conversation, my name lingered, unspoken but understood. I wasn't involved anymore, yet my influence was undeniable. I thought about Uncle David's words again. "You're the crack in their perfect picture. You didn't ruin anything. You exposed it. And you did the right thing." That phrase stayed with me. A crack. A flaw. A truth revealed. I had become the lens through which honesty shone, and for that, I felt no regret. By the last night of my trip, I sat alone on the sand, watching waves curl in beneath a sky of molten gold. I felt a profound sense of clarity. I hadn't just lost a sister. I had lost an illusion. The illusion that love, approval, or recognition could be bought, manipulated, or coerced. And the relief, the liberation, was unlike anything I had known. I realized that what I had gained was far more valuable than anything money could buy. Freedom. Freedom from manipulation. Freedom from being the silent yes machine. Freedom from guilt disguised as obligation. Freedom to live my life on my terms. I had boundaries now. I had peace. I had the understanding that my value didn't depend on sacrifices that went unrecognized. And I had the quiet confidence that when I said yes, it was because I wanted to, not because I was expected to. When I finally returned home, the world hadn't changed. My parents still occasionally reached out. Emily remained silent. But I had changed. I had reclaimed myself, my resources, and my voice. The old Kathy, the quiet, endlessly helpful, financially overextended Kathy, no longer existed. And the new Kathy, calm, assertive and free, was exactly who she was meant to be. I poured a cup of coffee one morning, looked out at the city waking up, and smiled softly. Life had finally given me something no wedding could. A chance to be seen, valued, and respected on my terms. And in that quiet golden moment, I understood fully. I was free.